All right, the Governor Abbott Beto O'Rourke debate for governor of Texas on a Friday night in Nowheresville, Texas, with no audience per Abbott's requirements. I'm really not a big fan of political debate. To me, it seems like it highlights a talent with no use in governance. I mean, debate can be slightly relevant in legislatures, but it's not like anyone's going around altering anybody else's stance with well-reasoned arguments. Positions are swayed primarily by fundraising dollars and public polling. You could say oration is a fairly useful skill in governance, but not necessarily, at least in at the federal level. Congressional oration seems to be limited to snarky highlights and meme moments. In political debate, it seems public opinion is most swayed by the spectacle. That we presume these are gladiators in a war of appearance and attitude, not substance. They're emotion, not the articulated ability to administer or govern. Crowds are wooed by gotcha moments, irredeemable flubs, whether from being tongue-tied or boneheaded. So let's take a look at some clips. From the outset, I'd hate to be Abbott. He has a bunch of built-in, just absolute loser positions that are going to be really hard to get out of.
Your answers tonight. Let's get to it. Immigration. Immigration issues are especially relevant here in the Rio Grande Valley.
We've been working to respond to the disaster caused by the Biden administration that has caused such an economic burden on these communities. Farms and ranches are run over, communities are disrupted, homes that are invaded. Remember this, just 2 years ago, we had one of the safest borders in decades, but under the Biden administration, we have more people coming across the border.
What we just heard from the governor is what we are likely to hear over the course of this debate. He's going to blame people like President Biden. He's going to try to lie about my record, and he's going to distract from his failures. $4 billion into Operation Lone Star. We're seeing not fewer, but more encounters at our border right now.
This was a really good position for Beto to take from the beginning, knowing full well that Abbott was going to blame other people for many situations. He states from the very beginning, just watch out for this. This is what this guy's going to do. And then he brings up the money spent on that program, Texas Lone Star, which is another big issue.
That we have a Texas-based guest worker program to alleviate shortages that we have in our state for labor demands.
About $4 billion in state funds has been directed to the Operation Lone Star Border Security Initiative. Should more money be allocated towards Operation Lone Star? And if so, Governor, how much?
Well, candidly, we shouldn't have to allocate any money for it, because this is all because of Joe Biden's failure to do the president's job to secure the border. We're only having to do that because of Joe Biden's failure and because it would be the same pathway that Beto would take us down. Speaking of which, he talked about this guest worker program. He could have done that had he won the race for the Senate or won the race for president. That's not a job for governor.
So this just turned into an all-around stinker for Abbott because Beto was pointing out, look, he's going to blame other people, and then Abbott's admitting to spending money that's not being effective, or at least he's let that slid. It's not effective, so why are we spending the money on it? And you're saying we shouldn't be spending any anyway. And then the other thing, this is why I don't like debates. I mean, Abbott just made a really good point there. If Beto had won the presidency, or if he was in Congress, then he'd be able to make some type of effect on worker visas. He's not going to be doing that as governor of Texas. He's not going to be issuing visas out of Texas. There's no workers program that he can, of his own accord, begin in Texas. So whereas what Beto said might have sounded nice, Abbott also let it slip. He didn't highlight forcefully or strongly enough. He said that this isn't your job. It's not that it isn't his job. It's that it's not even possible.
When the governor spent $4 billion of our tax dollars on what has turned out to be political theater for his political career, he promised us that it would deter people from coming to this.
Many migrant advocates and Democratic elected officials have expressed concerns about the treatment of migrants being bused from Texas to other states and cities. Here's New York Mayor Eric Adams talking about that just last week.
And when we reached out to Governor Abbott and stated, can we coordinate? Can we identify, who's traveling here, that we don't have to guess this? They refuse to do so.
The White House has called this a political stunt. Governor Abbott, is this a political stunt? And has there been coordination with the states and cities these migrants are being taken to? And if not, why not? You have 60 seconds, sir.
So this operation began after meeting with local officials, sheriffs, mayors, police chiefs, and county judges, where they were overrun with the number of migrants that Border Patrol had dumped into their tiny little communities. They needed relief, and busing was one of the ways of providing them relief, and thus began the process of busing the migrants to cities that self-identified as sanctuary cities. Mayor Adams has never called my office, never talked to anybody in my administration, and so what he's saying is just flat out false.
I want to be clear, though. You say that Mayor Adams has never called your office.
Correct.
Thank you.
This is why I'd almost prefer to have like an assemblage of hardcore experts just grill each individual candidate one-on-one and instead of debate. Because, you know, I'd like them to ask you, what is your understanding of what a sanctuary city means? This word, it's tossed around as if this means it's like some kind of city that has a flag up that says, oh, any migrants, just come on in, we're waiting here for you. That is not what sanctuary city means. Sanctuary city means that your local forces do not work in coordination with the federal government when it comes to tracking, apprehending, arresting, holding migrants, whether illegal or otherwise, that they're not going to use their forces for federal work. That's all that means. And the other thing is what was said between the mayor of New York and him. I don't know what the truth of that is. I'd like to have an expert there that got to the bottom of it and say, look, this is what happened.
These migrants are being sent to states and cities with Democratic leadership. Why aren't these migrants being sent to so-called sanctuary cities in Republican-led states like New Orleans or Metro Atlanta? You have 30 seconds.
So again, because these cities of New York and Washington, D.C. and Chicago are so large and have the infrastructure that's available, they have the capability of accommodating the number of migrants that are being sent better than these other cities that you talked about. There will be other cities in the future that also will be on the receiving end of migrants, because we will continue to have to move migrants because Joe Biden continues to allow more illegal immigrants to come into the state of Texas.
Totally not a good look for Abbott.
Here's one student who survived the shooting at Robb Elementary.
You have to be 21 to buy a case of beer, but an 18-year-old bought a gun to kill kids. That does not make sense.
To be clear, that's a call to raise the age limit to buy an AR-15 style weapon from 18 to 21. A Republican governor in Florida broke with the NRA to sign this into law after the Parkland mass shooting. Governor Abbott, you say this can't be done in Texas. Mr. O'Rourke, you say it will be done if you're elected. Can you please explain your positions? Let's start with you.
So any attempt to try to raise the age is going to be met with it being overturned. So we need to get to the bottom of what is really ailing our communities, and that is the mental health that is leading people to engage in school shootings. And Texas is already addressing that.
Can you please explain your position on raising the age limit to purchase AR-15 style weapons?
First of all,
You also have 60 seconds.
I'm going to follow the lead of those families from Uvalde. That's who I'm doing this for. In fact, many of them drove more than 5 hours, 280 miles to be here today, even though they're not allowed in this theater because of the governor's conditions, because they want to hold him accountable, because it's been 18 weeks since their kids have been killed, and not a thing has changed in this state to make it any less likely that any other child will meet the same fate. All we need is action, and the only person standing in our way is the governor of the state of Texas. After all of these mass shootings, this governor has done nothing except make it easier for people who should not have a firearm to carry them publicly, and this is what we get as a result.
I would not support a red flag law that would take guns away from people without due process. Now, a lot has happened in those 4 years. Are you open to implementing red flag laws today?
But I'm still against red flag laws for the reason that it would deny a lawful Texas gun owner their constitutional right to due process.
Thank you, Governor.
I honestly don't know what the voters of Texas think on all those issues. The national perspective, those are all loser positions for the governor, from red flag laws to the incompetence and the mass shootings, to not just like totally not willing to find out a way to raise the age for some types of weapons. You know, these are indefensible positions.
Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke. So just to be clear, yes or no, are you for confiscating AR-15 style weapons?
I'm for making sure that we make progress. Those families that I was just with from Uvalde want us to take action. This is the common ground. I've listened to Republicans and Democrats alike on this. We can agree on this much. Raise the age to 21,
Okay.
red flag law, and a universal background check.
Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke.
That was Beto getting out from underneath a previously stated position of confiscating all AR-15 style weapons. He did a pretty good job.
To address
If it's
Uvalde,
an
but the
emergency-
broader-based issue across the entire state of Texas,
If it's an emergency,
as you
call a
mentioned
special
earlier.
session now. Why wait till the next year?
Mr. O'Rourke, a question for you now.
Gun violence
still-
is the leading cause of death for children and teenagers in this state. Why are you
Sir,
waiting
please.
to save lives?
Beto did this a lot of interrupting the governor and talking past his time limit. I really don't dig it. I don't like it at all. I'm sure it was something that they planned on doing in advance to disrupt and get underneath the skin of Abbott, and it worked. I don't like that at all.
I'll give you 15 seconds if you want to respond to what he said.
Well, I was going to answer the question I thought you were going to ask me. But
I've got another question
Okay.
for you. Right after the shooting, you said this.
But the reality is, as horrible as what happened, it could have been worse.
It could have been worse. You heard
Sure.
Mr. O'Rourke bring it up. You later said you were misled about what happened inside Robb Elementary. If my memory serves me right, that was the day after. So we were just moments after what had happened. Who misled you, and will they be held accountable? You have 30 seconds.
everyone in that briefing room that provided me the information about what law enforcement did, what that comment was based upon was information by law enforcement about all the children in all the other classrooms that they evacuated.
Man, that was a rough 2 minutes. There's no way out from underneath that. And Abbott entirely owns that, man. That's all his.
Governor, the
Governor.
buck stops on your desk. You blame everyone else. You blame Joe Biden for other issues.
We need to move on.
You
We
blame
need to move
people
on
for misleading
topics,
you.
and
You
actually,
are misleading this state.
Sally will ask.
I don't like it, but it's effective.
It's the topic of abortion. A recent Next Star, Emerson College, and the Hill poll shows more than half of those polled say they are more likely to vote in this election because of the overturning of Roe versus Wade.
By accessing health care immediately, they can get the Plan B pill that can prevent a pregnancy from occurring in the first place.
Some healthcare advocates say emergency contraception like Plan B is often unavailable or it's too costly for women to afford. And trauma could prevent them from taking emergency contraception in the time frame that it's effective. So, Governor, we're going to start with you. With these concerns that I just laid out, is emergency contraception a viable alternative to abortion for victims of rape and incest? And you have 60 seconds, sir.
Sure. So to directly answer the topics that you raised, on the availability of it, it's incumbent upon the state of Texas to make sure that it is readily available.
Governor, 30 seconds, or I'll give you 30 seconds to answer this one. I still want to know, is Plan B the alternative when it comes to somebody who is pregnant from rape or incest?
Well, it depends on what you mean by alternative.
Guess what? She's not happy with his answers. This is entirely owned by the GOP and by Abbott in Texas, the things nationally and that he did on local level.
This election is about reproductive freedom. If you care about this, you need to turn out and vote. I will fight to make sure that every woman in Texas can make her own decisions about her own body, her own future, and her own health care. But I've got to respond to this silliness on Plan B, this comment he made about eliminating rape in the state of Texas. This is an attack on women. More women have been raped in the state of Texas than any other state. He's saying this because he signed the most extreme abortion ban in America. No exception for rape, no exception for incest. It begins at conception, and it's taking place in a state that is at the epicenter of a maternal mortality crisis, thanks to Greg Abbott.
Well, that's all I have time for. Abbott had just loser position after loser position, but does it make a difference in the state of Texas? I doubt it.